Back in around 2000, 2001, I was driving by myself from visiting my mom in Colorado back to Arizona. I was in a station wagon and had a desk my mom had given me that was my grandfather's. I've always been scared driving at night. This might be because of too many scary movies or because my mom's paranoia rubbed off on me. I was in the army and drove back and forth a lot to visit her. She would get mad at me for sleeping at rest stops or gas stations and would always tell me that eventually something bad is going to happen, that someone is going to kidnap me or even kill me. But I just didn't want to bother with the hassle and expenses of a motel most of the time. I digress. So I'm driving an empty stretch of highway late at night with no other cars around me. This red truck comes up behind me, flashing his lights and honking his horn loud. I was thinking to myself that there was something wrong with my car, or maybe there was something wrong with the desk in the hatchback. Otherwise, why else would he be insisting on me pulling over? So I decided to pull over. I was in my mid-20s at the time and still a bit naive. While I'm getting out of the car, I noticed the car behind me is still flashing his lights and honking his horn. I got about to the middle of my car while going to the back to check what was going on when it hit me. Why is he still honking his horn when I'm already out of my car and pulled over? I found that quite odd. Then I hear the sound of a door open, a person stepping out of the car, and the door shut. I can't explain this feeling to this day, but something just felt wrong. I just felt like I should not be there at that moment. I jumped back in my car as fast as I could and sped off. The next exit was 45 miles away. This truck behind me followed me the entire way. I took the first exit to go to a crowded grocery store with a laundromat next to it. There was an ambulance parked at the laundromat with its light flashing, so I decided to park right next to it, thinking if an ambulance is present, a cop should show up eventually. Shortly after, the same truck with the same guy inside pulls up to the grocery parking lot and parks his truck directly in front of me. I was terrified, frozen. I couldn't bring myself to get out of the car. I waited for quite some time until he suddenly, as if out of nowhere, got up and left. After he left, I decided to wait longer before continuing my drive back to Arizona. I was paranoid and watchful for any red trucks the entire time. Fast forward about 5 or 6 years. I'm sitting in front of the TV and watching an unsolved mysteries type of show when a very interesting story pops up. One about a man on that exact same stretch of highway with a red truck. A man who used to honk his horn and flash his lights until random strangers will pull over so he could kidnap and murder them. I can only thank my gut for telling me something is wrong and making me get out of that situation. I try not to think what would happen otherwise. I was watching my daughter's kids while she and her husband went out of town. They have a teenage daughter named Alyssa. It was around 3 a.m. when I woke up by a weird rustling sound and looked out of the window and saw movement. I saw a boy emerge from the bushes on the other side of the house. I saw a bike tossed on the lawn that definitely was not ours. My first thought was that it was a burglar, casing houses, but since he looked young and came through on a bike, I figured scaring him straight would be enough for him to decide to head home. So I went out on the porch, flipped the lights on, and said, "Can I help you?" in my classroom voice. The guy looked surprised, but not nervous. He was wearing a Letterman-style jacket, but once I got a clear view of him in the streetlight, he seemed much older than my granddaughter, gruff and more wiry than athletic. He walked up close to the house and said, "Yes, I'm looking for Alyssa." I gave him a disapproving glare, hoping he'd realize he came looking for a girl late at night, and a grumpy old person answered instead, and that now it's time to split. I was thinking what must have happened is that Alyssa knew her parents were going out of town, and maybe before she knew I'd be staying over, she told a secret older boyfriend to come over. It was late, and I was alone with several kids, so I didn't want him coming any closer to the house. I also thought it was a bit weird that he came this late and wanted to be sure Alyssa actually wanted to talk to him. "I'm sorry, who?" I said. "Alyssa," he said. "Alyssa Lambert. This is her house." This showed me he knew her last name. They must be at least friends. I asked him to wait at the porch. He started to walk up, and I just felt this sick feeling in my gut. Instinct kicked in. I yelled, "No, stop. This is a private property, and you will wait right there." I closed the door, get to Alyssa's room, and wake her up, saying something along the lines of, "I don't know what the big idea was to have friends over at this time of night, but you can go ahead and tell them to go home." She looked at me as if she has no clue what I'm talking about. I said, "There's a guy outside asking for you." Confused, she gets up and goes to the window. She sees him and turns white as a sheet. "He asked for me?" "Yes." "By name?" "Yes." "Call the police. I've never seen him in my life." I grabbed the phone and called 911 immediately. But as I was on the phone with them, Alyssa started tugging at my arm. "He's coming up." I had younger kids in the house to think about, so I slightly opened the door, just enough to yell out and say that I spoke to my husband and none of us know any Alyssa. "Leave the property or I'm calling 911. The man got angry and started yelling for her to come out. Thankfully, the police came pretty quickly, and as soon as the man heard the sirens, he grabbed his bike and took off. I watched him pull up next to a car with no front headlights or plates and speed off. The police followed in the same direction, but couldn't find a thing, not the bike or the car. They then advised us to take Alyssa's social media details offline completely. Who knows what was waiting for Alyssa inside that car? My best friend is an influencer. Not big time, but a big enough following to get free shit and has gotten 2 sponsored trips. She still works a full-time job, but does the Instagram thing on the side, mostly because of the perks. She's not big enough to live off of this yet. Anyways, this was her first trip. A little boutique hotel from Miami contacted her via Instagram DM and offered her an all-expenses-paid trip to Miami for Memorial Weekend 2018, in exchange for her to be in the hotel and take pictures and do a couple of stories. She was told she could bring a female friend with her if she wanted to, and that everything would be covered for that friend as well. This was her first time doing this, so at the time she wasn't really sure of how it worked. They sent her a bogus contract for her to sign, and it said she'd be responsible for paying for her plane ticket to Miami, and that she'd be reimbursed for it later. This was to prevent a no-show, meaning the influencer will get the ticket purchased by the hotel and the influencer will never show. It seemed reasonable. My friend chose to invite me. We figured it shouldn't be a big deal. In worst case scenario, they don't want to pay for my plane ticket and should just cover it for me, and that's that. We were supposed to be picked up by the hotel at the airport. So the day comes and we arrive to Miami. There's a guy holding a sign with her name, and the paper has the hotel logo. We are greeted and we are escorted to a black SUV. Here's where it gets weird. As soon as we are getting on the car, the driver is visibly upset. We thought he was talking to the guy who walked us over to the car, but he was talking to my friend. He had a very thick accent and was wearing dark shades. He was telling my friend that she's not allowed to bring her boyfriend, me, and that she said it was two girls. Two girls. The hotel told me 2 girls, not one girl and one guy. 2 girls. He was demanding to see where the other girl was. We were speechless and confused. The guy who walked us to the car looked annoyed and started to fight with the driver in Portuguese. Then he turns to us and asks us where the other girl is. My friend, which is visibly upset right now, tells them that there's no other girl, and that she's the person they were supposed to pick up for the Instagram deal, and that I'm just the friend who's coming along with her on this trip. The big guy who sat in the passenger seat, the guy who walked us to the car, gets out of the car, tosses our luggage out of it, and says something along the lines of, "This is some fucking bullshit," gets in the car, and they take off. And that was it. We were in shock. Utter and complete shock. My friend immediately emails Melissa, the PR person who we had been in contact through email with, to tell her what happened. No response. We decide to take a cab and show up to the hotel. As soon as we showed up, everything made sense. The hotel had been rebranded and had a completely different name, owner, and staff. We walked in and showed the staff the Instagram page, which they agreed was indeed the Instagram page of the hotel it used to be, but not the new one. This Instagram account had more than 10,000 followers and seemed quite real. However, upon further inspection, we realized the pictures and uploads were quite old. My friend felt like an idiot and would not stop crying. We called the police, met up with a detective. Nothing ever came out of it. They investigated who was running the account before, or who had access to it. None of the people who used to run the account had anything to do with it. Nothing ever came out of this. It's upsetting and scary to know that whoever wanted to abduct my friend or any other girls by using this old hotel Instagram account knows who my friend is. The hotel's Instagram page has since been deleted, and we never heard anything from anyone ever again. But to think my friend would have been kidnapped had she gone with another girl instead of me sends chills down my spine. Life isn't easy when you're a single college student, especially when you're a guy, a 21-year-old South Korean to be exact. Neil struck out pretty often. Even more frustrating was that I was reasonably handsome. I stayed in shape, my round face accentuated by my spiked black hair. With the boom of K-pop, I figured I'd be causing a mass hysteria like the Beatles. But that wasn't the case. I stayed alone in my dorm. And this December night, no different. I started the computer. Tonight was slow on the dating apps. Drunk and frustrated, I went into emergency mode, searching for a fresh, new dating app. Shivering in the cold, I stole a glance at my closed dorm door, and then, on my phone, I found it. A brand new dating app with a 4-star rating. Eat Your Heart Out, it was called. So, with nothing left to lose, I downloaded the app and made an account. Almost immediately, a notification box popped up. Allow Eat Your Heart Out to access your location while you're using the app? Of course, I hit yes. Standard stuff for those kind of apps. Before I could even scout the scene, I had to make a brief bio, upload some photos, slog through the validation process as if I were undergoing a medical exam. My phone then jolted to life, over and over. Notifications poured in. Rather than excitement, I felt disappointed. It must be bots, I figured. Not even the ugly girls were desperately waiting on new members. I clicked on my profile pic. The shirtless photo was now getting countless likes, countless comments. Intrigued, I scrolled through them, and in the chilling loneliness, I became unnerved.
"He looks yummy,"
a middle-aged dad said.
"I can't wait to cut into that,"
exclaimed a soccer mom. Battling the unease, I looked around the dorm. For once, I was glad to be alone. Another vibration pulled me back to the app. "Looks like we're having Chinese tonight," said a bearded country guy. Angry, I replied to him, "I'm Korean, asshole." More comments arrived. "Young and tasty. I'll be sure to eat the heart out." I got ready to delete the damn thing until a new comment caught my eye. "I'm on the way for you," said a muscular man. Panicking, I went to the locals page. There, my profile pic stood in the corner of the single C, the middle of this menu. A smaller caption under my pic read, 10 miles away, FSU campus, Azilla Hall, room 17. That was my exact location. Trembling, I went to my messages. For once, the flooded inbox gave me fear rather than excitement.
"I'm hungry and thirsty. Can't wait to meet you."
I was speechless, scared beyond belief. Then, a brutal knock hit my door. I turned to face it. Then, several other knocks. I resisted the idea of a nanny box for a long time. It seemed inhumane to me. And I guess, if I'm being honest, it felt like an admission of failure as a father. We shouldn't have needed the help. We should have been able to afford the right sort of care. We should have been able to make the necessary time. But life is hard, and compromise comes easier and easier as you get older. Besides, everyone else was doing it. It was the only option most of us could afford. So, when Julian was 4 months old, we bought a nanny box. And that's where Julian spent his days, while Harriet and I worked. There's no way to know what it's really like inside the box. The advertisements made it all sound very stimulating. It's supposedly very immersive and comforting for a small child. stimulating all the usual inputs a child that age needs, beaming the information directly into the brain. It provided food, it kept your baby clean, and it was tested, they said. It was safe. Most importantly, however, there was Julian, who remained our happy, alert boy, meeting every development benchmark right on schedule. It wasn't until Julian's first word that we began to understand what we'd done. We were eating, Julian in his high chair. Harriet held out the spoon and said, "Say mama." Julian's expression changed so slightly. His mouth curled in unfamiliar ways. "Samsung," he replied. Harriet blinked. "Mama?" she said. "Samsung," said Julian, a little more forcefully. "Samsung 4K." Julian giggled and clapped. We both tried to pass it off as a case of monkey see, monkey do. But Julian got older and more talkative, and he never learned to say mama or dada. "Julian, how are you today?" we asked. "Build a website with Squarespace," he said, smiling, so bright behind the eyes. "Julian, what's my name?" I asked. "Shop Wayfair, for home decor on a budget," he says, so sure of himself. There were lawsuits, of course. We were part of one of the bigger class action suits. But the truth is that no amount of money would ever bring back Julian's mind. There's no way to undo the mistakes that we made. They say there are something like 400,000 box babies in the United States alone. You may see one from time to time. You'll say hello, and they'll say, "Shop the dollar value menu for McDonald's." You'll say, "Have a nice day," and they'll say, "A great day starts with Jimmy Dean microwavable breakfast." You'll say, "I love you, son," and they'll say, "Start earning bonus miles with Capital One today." Over time, you learn to just smile when that happens. After all, it's not their fault. Break-ins aren't uncommon. I've worked at a park for 10 years, and I can tell you for a fact that teens clipping through the chain links and taking the aqua loop for a midnight joyride is a regular occurrence. Standard procedure is to clean up the mess and get on with it. It's hardly an end-of-the-day scenario. This latest incident, the trouble amounted to replacing a broken padlock on one of the perimeter gates and scrubbing a couple of muddy boot prints from the mouth of one of the tube slides feeding into the main pool. Like I said, pretty standard procedure. We checked the security tapes. Guy with a duffel bag entered, then left 4 hours later. We figured he was probably getting high and jerking off to National Enquirer clippings, or whatever it is meth heads do in their downtime. In a park that serves around 1,000 kids daily, solving that mystery wasn't exactly our top priority. Park opened up like normal. Nice summer's day. I was standing next to the main pool, lifeguard duty, just making sure all the kids are safe. It's largely a dull, uneventful job. So when Raj, one of our security officers, approached me and struck up a conversation, it was a welcome break. "Hey," he said, holding out something that glinted in the sun.
"Check this shit out. Found it on the grass near the gate. Health and safety hazard, don't you think?"
He was showing me a razor blade. "Oh shit," I said. "Good catch, bud. Hate to see someone step on that. Raj nodded. Then, there was this treble, echoing scream from inside the tube slide. I don't think I'll ever forget it. Just the animal yelp of desperate fear and pain. As a kid's skin, bright red, in a tail of bloody water, came trembling out into the main pool. They were shaking and shrieking. I swear to God, it was the stuff of nightmares. It's a little girl, and when I get a hold of her, I see her skin opening up all over her body, and these long, ragged gashes. She's shaking, completely in shock and pain, bleeding everywhere. Everyone in the pool is hysteric. As I'm carrying her over to the medical bay, I can't help but think about that tiny little razor blade Raj showed me. Now let me ask you a question. Do you have any idea how many of those things someone can superglue to the inside of a water slide in 4 uninterrupted hours? Because now, I sure as hell do. A quick fact for you, for those who are living under a rock. There are different time zones. So different countries get into 2020 first. At first, New Zealand. Then some of Russia. Then Australia. They all got into the new year. They all went dark. The satellite feeds showed zero light coming from them as soon as the clock had turned 12. No one knows what to do, and as more and more countries go into the new year, the more go dark. It's about 2 hours from midnight here, and everyone is freaking out. I work at air traffic control, and planes have been going off radar all day. We've been waiting for reports of crashed planes, but none have came up. All the flights have been grounded and cancelled until further notice. So we are just waiting up here, looking at the radar and calling our families to say our possible goodbyes. The phone lines have gone down to those places too. People have been cut off mid-phone call as the person on the other line went into the new year. There wasn't even an answering machine. Only the classic "we're sorry" recorded message, which means the phone line no longer exists. The news don't know what to do, so the government put out an emergency broadcast. But Washington went out before they could actually do so. We've been looking around different websites and see that even neighbors with different time zones across the street go dark once the time hits. A coworker said that his friend walked across the zone and just vanished. But I'm taking that with a grain of salt. There's nothing we can do but just sit and wait for the inevitable. I just hope that whatever happens when the clock strikes 12 is better than what we had last year.